This is a Fox News Alert. I'm Brett Baer in Washington. Right now, the Obama administration is confirming what we've been telling you for weeks. Obamacare premiums will go up sharply next year, and many consumers will be down to just one insurer. The Department of Health and Human Services says before taxpayer-provided subsidies kick in, premiums for the mid-level benchmark plan will increase an average of 25% across the 39 states served by the federally run online market. And 1 in 5 customers will have plans from only one insurer to choose from. The administration insists that subsidies, which are supposed to rise alongside rising premiums, will insulate consumers from massive payouts. State regulators, though, are not so sure. Republicans will pounce on the numbers as confirmation that insurance markets created by the 2010 health overhaul are on the verge of collapsing in what they call a death spiral. The Obamacare open enrollment period starts November 1st, 1 week before Election Day. Joining me now, attorney Elliot Burke, an expert in election law. Elliot, thanks for being here.
Great to be with you.
First, let's go over the legality of this. You've seen this video, what this group alleges. What about the legality of what's happening? Are they breaking the law?
Well, the first thing we need to look at is whether or not there's a public communication, and it's not clear to me from the video they put out that there actually is a public communication. That really means a paid political advertisement, so something in the newspaper, broadcast, satellite, something like that. Here, it looks like there just were protesters dressed up as Donald Ducks that had appeared, but I doubt the FEC would see that as a public communication.
What about the interaction between the Clinton campaign, the DNC, and this outside group? Numerous times in this video it says that it was Hillary Clinton's idea to deploy these ducks directly, the candidate.
Well, that's a different question, because anytime a candidate committee or a political party is working with an outside group, you get into possible in-kind contributions. And here, the allegation is that the candidate herself may have directed an outside group to engage in this behavior. And if so, that could be an in-kind contribution. In-kind contributions can be permissible, but they need to be reported. But because we're dealing with an outside third-party group here, that group may also take corporate contributions. And if that's the case, then it clearly would be illegal.
Now, that would result in an FEC filing potentially, and that's a long process.
That's correct, yeah. Typically, an FEC complaint, once filed, for it to go through the process, we're talking 18 months, maybe even years.
But overall, the perception here that on the first video that was dealing with violence and stirring up violence at Trump rallies, where Robbie Mook and others said they had no relationship with these people at all. And now you see the second video where they clearly have interaction and maybe even direction from the candidate. It's a different story on these two videos.
It is, and obviously that's a question for the voters in terms of trustworthiness, but in terms of the law, if there was actual conversations about doing this, if there was knowing and willful violations, then yes, that could get into a criminal investigation.
Okay. Elliot, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
WikiLeaks is again showering the Clinton campaign with unfavorable emails. The headline tonight, the incredibly lucrative and ethically questionable relationship between Bill Clinton, the former president, and an influential consulting firm. Here's Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry.
New emails show top Clinton advisor Cheryl Mills was privately admitting the family's foundation needed to clean up glaring conflicts of interest around the overlapping nonprofit and for-profit roles of former President Bill Clinton. Mills circulating a memo in December 2011 that said currently the president personally compensates certain employees to perform duties that fall outside of the scope of the foundation entity's mission. These employees support the president's business, personal, former president, and political activity, while also providing support for foundation activity, for which their services are billed to the foundation. Except later that same month, Chelsea Clinton wrote Mills the proposed reforms, such as setting new rules on outside income for foundation advisors like Doug Band, were hollow. Chelsea writing, quote, "I worry the below recreates the existing muddle." It turns out, though, one of the people at the foundation collecting outside income was her own father, who was paid a salary of $3.5 million a year by Band's consulting company, Teneo, according to the recent book, Man of the World, by author Joe Conason. And according to congressional investigators, Hillary Clinton's top aide, Huma Abedin, was also paid by Teneo, the foundation, and the State Department.
When you read these emails, you see that she has very serious ethical problems, and the issues are what should decide this election, and she's wrong on them.
They dismissed it as a scheduling matter and again fell back on the line that the emails were pilfered by the Russians.
The Trump tax returns were stolen as well when they were mailed to the New York Times. You guys didn't object to that. In fact, you jumped all over them.
Well, we don't know where those tax returns come from.
Well, they were clearly stolen.
We don't know.
Another new email shows the Clinton team was worried the San Bernardino terror attack last December and the fact that shooter Tashfeen Malik had a visa to stay in America would expose that Clinton did not fix the visa waiver program. Advisor Ron Klain writing, "I don't know if saying, hey, this really wasn't a problem until after I left state is going to cut it." Clinton Chair John Podesta has his own deep ties to a Kremlin-backed investment firm that gave him 75,000 shares in an energy company. The Wall Street Journal reports Podesta in 2014 moved those shares into an LLC, which shares an address with his daughter, but he says he cut all ties. Though a leaked email now shows Podesta received a bill for legal expenses connected with the LLC funded by Russian money that he says he now has no connection with. Brett?
Follow up on that one. Ed, thank you. We are a little more than 2 weeks away from voting day. By now, everyone pretty much knows the nominees' positions, strengths, weaknesses. So from here on in, it's all about geography and math. Both candidates spending time in states Donald Trump must win. For Hillary Clinton, it's all about slamming the door and about time. Chief political correspondent Carl Cameron is with the Trump campaign tonight in Tampa, Florida. Good evening, Carl.
Hi, Brett. Well, the election's 2 weeks from tomorrow, and Donald Trump says now every poll that has him behind is bogus.
Trump began his second of 3 days in his premier must-win state of Florida at a Palm Beach County pumpkin farm.
Watch the polls, because this is part of the crooked system. It's part of the rigged system. They are phony polls put out by phony media. And I'll tell you what, all of us are affected by this stuff. And what they do is they try and suppress the vote. This way people don't go out and vote. But we're winning this race.
Florida, the Real Clear Politics average of recent polls shows Trump trailing by 4 points. Nationally, Clinton's average lead is 5.
Early voting in Florida begins today through the 5th. So make sure you get out and vote. Locations include City Hall, the Supervisor of Elections office. You got to get out there. Who's voted already? That's not bad.
Democrats have registered more new voters than Republicans in Florida, according to the Associated Press, and Clinton has run 5 times more ads on TV and social media than Trump. Trump needs to win Tampa and Orlando on the I-4 corridor that traverses the Sunshine State by big numbers to offset Clinton's strength in South Florida and with minorities across the biggest battleground state of them all. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, traditionally a big spender on GOP presidential nominees, is now focusing on other Republican candidates. And the Senate Republican Leadership Fund is now urging voters to elect more GOP members to check and balance Clinton's agenda. The implication being they expect Clinton will win.
The final 15 days is always a sprint for undecided and swing voters. But today, Trump was picking a fight with pollsters. Brett, thank you.
Carl Cameron with the Trump campaign. Carl, thank you. Hillary Clinton is in New Hampshire today, which only has 4 electoral votes, but is still a key piece to the Trump presidential puzzle, the presidential puzzle overall, in fact. However, the Democrat cannot escape the scandals being fed daily by WikiLeaks and charges of hypocrisy in some of her positions, plus that new Veritas video. Fox News correspondent Jennifer Griffin is with the Clinton team tonight in Manchester.
And on November 8th, we nasty women are going to march our nasty feet to cast our nasty votes to get you out of our lives forever.
Joined by one of her most fierce, outspoken allies on a stage in New Hampshire, Hillary Clinton and Senator Elizabeth Warren teamed up to help Governor Maggie Hassan in her Senate race against Republican Kelly Ayotte, who recently called Donald Trump a role model, a statement she later retracted.
Well, I got news for you, Donald Trump. Women have had it with guys like you. And nasty women have really had it with guys like you.
It's ironic that Clinton and Warren are now campaigning together, Warren the Wall Street reformist and Clinton the Wall Street beneficiary. They now sound exactly the same.
We're going to make big banks pay for the risks they pose to our economy, because Elizabeth is absolutely right. No No bank is too big to fail, and no one should be above the law.
But leaked Wall Street speeches showed that's not what Clinton said behind closed doors, and new leaked WikiLeaks emails show the Clinton campaign's disdain for the far left of the Democratic Party, referring to them as, quote, crazy leftists, naive, radical, and dumb. New data from the Federal Election Commission shows Clinton received 1/5 of her $1 billion in campaign donations from just 100 of the country's wealthiest individuals. That, according to an analysis by the Washington Post. Tim Kaine is campaigning in Florida.
Marco Rubio, he called Donald Trump dangerous, and he called Donald Trump a con artist. I don't get it, how you could call somebody a dangerous con artist and support him.
And President Obama is on a 3-day swing out west. Clinton's top donors include 19 billionaires who have donated $70 million to her super PAC. And tonight she'll be celebrating her birthday in Manhattan at a birthday party where those who attend will be donating $10,000 apiece. Brett?
Jennifer Griffin with the Clinton campaign. Jennifer, thank you. Another black mark tonight, raising questions about the integrity of the FBI investigation into the Hillary Clinton email scandal. It involves Virginia's Democratic governor and the wife of a key bureau official. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge connects the dots for us here tonight. Good evening, Catherine.
Well, thank you, Brett. Campaign finance records show that a senior FBI executive's wife received in excess of $400,000 from Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, a longtime Clinton ally. Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe's wife, Dr. Jill McCabe, ran for Virginia State Senate last year. While she lost the race, she received $467,000 from McAuliffe's PAC and another $207,000 from Virginia's Democratic Party, about a third of her total campaign funds. McAuliffe personally met with Dr. McCabe and her husband in March 2015 to encourage a run. At that time, Andrew McCabe was Associate FBI Director with no role in the Clinton case. 3 months after his wife lost her Senate race, Andrew McCabe was promoted in February to Deputy FBI Director with oversight of the email probe. Trump hit hard on the new allegations today.
It's unbelievable how Hillary Clinton got away with the email lie, the email scam, the email corruption, but now at least we have a pretty good idea.
The FBI ethics manual says employees must avoid even the appearance of a conflict. According to the FBI, McCabe flagged his wife's Senate race last year, and the matter was reviewed internally before his promotion. Quote, McCabe and FBI lawyers implemented a system of recusal from all FBI investigative matters involving Virginia politics. A process followed for the remainder of her campaign. During the campaign, he played no role, attended no events, and did not participate in fundraising. Meantime, McCabe was recently called by the House Government Oversight Committee to brief staffers on allegations of a quid pro quo between a senior State Department executive and an FBI agent in the Clinton case, Brett.
Catherine, thank you.
You're welcome.
Up next, the battle to retake Mosul, Iraq, from ISIS terrorists enters its second week, and it's getting deadly. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 29 in Philadelphia has classes resumed for more than 100,000 students who attend Pennsylvania's 14 state-owned universities. The union, representing more than 5,000 faculty members and coaches, has reached a tentative contract agreement. The new deals provide raises for all employees, but also require them to pick up a greater share of their health care costs. Fox 32 in Chicago, where the excitement over the Cubs' first appearance in the World Series in 71 years, where they'll face off against the Cleveland Indians, did not stop the usual weekend carnage. Police say 6 men were killed and at least 32 other people wounded in shootings between Friday night and Monday morning. And this is a live look at Los Angeles from our affiliate, Fox 11. The big story there tonight, the search for answers after one of the deadliest wrecks in California history. 13 people were killed, 31 injured early Sunday when a tour bus slammed into the back of a semi-truck near a road maintenance site. The investigation's underway. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back. Iraqi forces fought their way into 2 villages near Mosul today as the offensive to try to retake the city from ISIS terrorists entered its second week. Correspondent Benjamin Hall has tonight's update from Erbil.
The town of Bartella, on the road to Mosul, was said to be liberated 4 days ago. But today the battle there continued. The same is true in other towns, which continue to see resistance from ISIS, even after they are said to be cleared. The Pentagon now acknowledging troops are meeting heavier resistance than expected and that it is, quote, going to get heavier. On a road to the front line today, east of Mosul, we saw early signs of the battle. This man, bleeding and dazed, had been shot in the head while manning a gun turret. Ahead of him, we found more pockets of resistance and other casualties.
There is a fierce gun battle going on less than half a mile in front of us. We know that ISIS are holed up in a building there and they've been surrounded by the Iraqi army. Earlier, there were suicide truck bombs there. We're not sure now whether or not they may call in an airstrike.
The US-led coalition has said it carried out 6 airstrikes near Mosul on Sunday, destroying 19 fighting positions and 17 vehicles, while the State Department continues to say things are going to plan.
There's still a lot of work to do to defeat Daesh in Iraq. The progress is notable and it's important, but it's not enough until we actually kick them out of Mosul.
But as the battle rages slowly on, the underlying complexities have also bubbled to the surface. Turkish President Erdogan, keen to play a bigger role in Mosul, recently suggested his troops and air force could get more involved. But the Iranian President Rouhani warned Turkey not to interfere.
We consider intervention of foreign countries under the excuse of fighting terrorism and without coordination with the host country very dangerous.
So even as forces on the ground here make slow progress, and even as ISIS continue to launch counterattacks around this part of the country, many people already looking to who will take the lead in Mosul after ISIS are gone, because that surely will define not only the future of the city, also the country, possibly even of the region. Brett?
Benjamin Hall live in Erbil early Tuesday morning. Benjamin, thank you. Syrian government forces and their allies have captured strategic high ground in Aleppo tonight. Fighting in the key city in Syria resumed today after days-long lull aimed at allowing rebels and civilians to leave. None did. Russia now says it is not planning any more so-called humanitarian pauses in the fighting in Syria. France is shutting down a massive refugee camp in Calais. Long lines of migrants waited today to board buses in the port city. They are leaving this makeshift camp known as the Jungle. The refugees are going to reception centers around France where they can apply for asylum. Back in this country, an uproar over an effort to take back money given to America's heroes. It involves bonuses paid to the members of the California National Guard. Correspondent Anita Vogel explains from Los Angeles.
At the height of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, the California National Guard offered thousands of soldiers cash bonuses to re-enlist or extend their time overseas. Many took those bonuses in good faith and did their time. Plenty saw combat and were even wounded. Now, 10 years later, those same veterans are shocked to learn the Pentagon wants the money back.
I held up my end of the contract. I deployed, stayed in an additional 6 years as an infantry officer, served honorably, retired honorably. I didn't think there would ever be an issue.
A series of audits revealed the Guard gave out too much money and in some cases to the wrong people while under pressure to meet enlistment targets. Now as many as 10,000 veterans are being slapped with wage garnishments, interest charges, and tax liens unless they pay up. It doesn't sit well with those who know the burdens of wearing a uniform.
Newsflash to everybody. Nearly every soldier, sailor, airman, guardsman, and Marine I've known over the last 50 years lives paycheck to paycheck.
For its part, the California National Guard says its hands are tied, saying, quote, the California National Guard does not have the authority to unilaterally waive these debts. However, the California National Guard welcomes any law passed by Congress to waive these debts. Until that time, our priority is to advocate for our soldiers through this difficult process. But many vets say the process is too difficult and too long. Bob Deandra has already hired several lawyers and still no resolution.
One soldier said it best, I'll give you your money back if you give me my years back.
Today we're hearing from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle who say the idea that our veteran heroes should pay back these bonuses is unconscionable. Several members of Congress are calling on the Defense Department to forgive these debts immediately. Brett?
Ada, thank you. There are serious questions tonight about whether AT&T's plan to buy Time Warner will ever happen. Both presidential candidates and many other political figures here in Washington are already expressing optimism or skepticism, but depending on their point of view, about the proposed $85.4 billion deal. Time Warner's CEO says he's confident.
We're ready for a review. We expect it to be a vigorous review. Like you said, we're sure that we'll get a chance to visit with Congress and tell our story there. But we feel like the information and the data drive this, and the law will drive this.
That's AT&T CEO Randall Stephenson there. Time Warner owns HBO, CNN, and Warner Brothers. Stocks were up today. The Dow gained 77. The S&P 500 got back 10. The Nasdaq finished ahead 52. Even if you're not part of a pension plan, you may have to pay for the growing crisis in public employee pensions. National correspondent William LaJeunesse tells us how things got so bad and takes us to one city where things were done the right way.
I think we've been able to strike a really good balance in Fresno. We offer a really good retirement system that isn't going to break the bank.
Working class Fresno has one thing no other California city does: a fully funded pension.
The fact that they are so rare is a strong indication that government probably shouldn't be involved in this business if basically you have to find 1 out of every 100 who's doing it right.
Fresno is one of only 7 cities or states nationwide with a pension surplus, according to the nonpartisan research group Transparent California. The rest are $6 trillion short, setting aside just 35 cents for every dollar promised. Wisconsin is the only state over 50% funded, according to the American Legislative Exchange Council. The 5 worst include Illinois, where 60% of state workers retired in their 50s. In Connecticut, pensions average $40,000 a year, yet state employees contribute less than 2%, compared to 6% in North Carolina.
It literally is a system where it says, give us really rich benefits today that appear to be free, and if it does blow up in our faces, it won't blow up for 20 to 30 years.
Fresno is very much a tale of 2 cities. The city pension fund is 100% funded. They actually have a surplus of $300 million, whereas the county has an unfunded pension liability of almost $1 billion. The difference? City and union officials agreed to a realistic benefits package.
The unions have been amenable to keeping things reasonable. And since they've kept it reasonable, we're fully funded plus.
Pensions in the city of Fresno average $39,000, almost $20,000 a year less than the county.
It's better to be responsible and you take less of a benefit, right? So that you have something at the end.
In Fresno, California, William LaJeunesse, Fox News.
New undercover video linking Democratic dirty tricks to Hillary Clinton herself, possibly. We'll talk about it all with the panel, plus an update on Obamacare when we come back.
That's why I proposed a contract with the American voter. It's a set of promises, what I'll do in my first 100 days. It includes getting rid of immediately Obamacare, which is a disaster. Even Bill Clinton admitted Obamacare is the craziest thing in the world. Quote, craziest thing in the world. People wind up with their premiums doubled.
Well, the Obamacare situation getting worse today with the confirmation from the Obama administration that premiums, in fact, will go up an average of 25% across the country next year. Donald Trump's nominee for vice president tweeting out just moments ago, higher premiums, less competition, fewer choices lie ahead for Obamacare at Hillary Clinton. If you take a look at this map, you can see the hikes. This is from USA Today on the health care premiums under the Affordable Care Act expected to rise, and you can kind of get a sense there for the different colors, and it goes up to 50% is the black there, 40%, 45% is a little darker blue, and all of these states seeing increased premiums. Here's the Health and Human Services Secretary tweeting out tonight. The fact is, headline rate changes don't reflect what most consumers will pay. Dollars assistance is available to help get covered, meaning subsidies will increase, she says, along with the premium increases. Let's bring in our panel. Tom Rogan, columnist for National Review and Opportunity Lives, editor-in-chief of LifeZette, Laura Ingraham, Heidi Przybyla, senior political reporter for USA Today, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Heidi, it was your paper's map about the premium hikes earlier in the month, and now it has come to pass officially.
Yeah.
What does this mean politically?
Well, I think if you ask anyone, this was entirely foreseeable. Mitt Romney himself said when we were hatching this that it's not going to work if you let the sickest people all flood into the system and the healthiest people aren't there to kind of defray some of those costs. So we're inevitably here now, and it's coming days before the presidential election. So absolutely, it could really make some people angry. Now, we're talking about a small, generally speaking, universe of people, about 5 to 7 million people who fall into this category, who don't get the subsidies and are going to see these rate hikes, and they are massive rate hikes, in some cases by 116%. What needs to happen is that both parties need to knock off the politics after the election. Hillary Clinton and the Democrats need to stop, like that statement you just saw, being in denial that this is working. And the Republicans, for their part, need to also accept that this law is probably not going anywhere if we have a Democrat in the White House. Actually, it's definitely not going anywhere. And they have to decide whether they want to work with the new president to improve it.
Laura.
This is a major drag on the economy. Healthcare spending is going up. Remember, Obama famously said we're going to be bending the cost curve down. And I think Ed Morrissey of National Review said the only thing that's bending downward is the honesty curve, because it's clearly not. I mean, my own health premiums, I think, have gone up 37%, something like that. And there are a lot of people who just can't afford this. And they didn't want to afford this, and it was foisted upon them. And remember, it was passed without any Republican support. That was a mistake. In retrospect, it's obvious. But they sold this thing as an economic boon. They sold this as you can keep your doctor and your health care coverage if you wanted it. All of that turned out to be false. We have doctors quitting en masse. We have prescription drug prices. The cost of that, because we don't bid those out properly. It's a disaster. Trump has a real political opportunity here, and it also happens to be true.
Tom, this was an albatross in the midterms. The open enrollment, as I mentioned, starts November 1st, 1 week to the day, to Election Day. You would think that this has some effect on people looking at the ballot.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that clearly this is going to keep happening, that these marginal cost increases, the fundamental structural problem is the fundamental problem, in the sense that the cost curve, as Laura notes, is going to continue on that up curve. I would say one issue as well, potentially going forwards, I don't know whether Mr. Trump will be able to capitalize on it because of his polling with millennial voters, but it certainly allows Republicans to try and usurp some of this narrative about social justice, because young people across the country are seeing these ever-escalating price hikes. Certainly myself, my friends, liberal friends, complaining about declining quality in tandem with escalating prices. That does not speak kindly to the notion of social justice as something that people can gather behind.
And some of them, Charles, are just not getting in. They're just choosing, you know what, why do I have to do this now?
And that's the rational thing to do, is not to join. It was constructed from the beginning as a way to transfer money from the healthy young to the older sick, with a promise that somehow it's not going to cost anybody anything. The young have made the right decision, the rational decision of not joining in, which makes the risk pool, the ratio of the sick to the healthy, completely out of whack, which was utterly predictable and predicted. As a result, it is becoming insolvent. As a result, in the majority of the states, the big insurers are pulling out because it is bankrupting them. And when the Democrats talk about a fix, the essence of the fix is you pour in tax money.
Public option.
Exactly. And also, they're going to have to increase the subsidies. They're going to have to lower the level at which you receive the subsidies. And this is all to make this simply a transition to a fully controlled, single-payer government system, which is what Obama and the others dreamed about at the beginning. Whether it was intended or not, that's the only way to go, because it is utterly insolvent and structurally contradictory. So that's what the Democrats are going to sell as a fix, and I don't think anybody should buy it.
All right, I want to turn to our other story at the top of the show, and that is this Project Veritas video.
These individuals no longer have a relationship with the DNC. They've never had a relationship with the Clinton campaign. This was, again, a video that was leaked out for the purpose of damaging the campaign. It is edited, so we don't know what the full context is.
Bob's contract, according to the records that I was able to pull at the DNC, was not signed until June of 2016.
Just to give you some context, Bob Kramer is this consultant whose Democratic National Committee contract was severed after last week's Veritas video. The White House logs say he's visited 299 times between 2010 to 2016, 34 visits with the president also in attendance. Now, some have said that there are even more of those, and meeting with the president. The bottom line is this guy is connected, Laura, and these videos show that he's talking about Hillary Clinton saying, you know, let's get these Donald Ducks about tax returns out to this outside organization.
Yeah, if these are independent expenditures being used, they're not supposed to be coordinated with the campaign. Now, there's a very strict three-pronged test. It's to be able to meet whether this coordinated expenditure, which is against federal election law. It regards payment, content, and conduct. Now, the content here is this Donald Duck character. It's not clear that that would, under the legalistic definition, be a communication that is coordinated as a legal matter. I don't want to get into the legal weeds.
We talked about it at the beginning of the show.
Right, but I know that guest kind of dismissed it. It's not all that clear yet. That has to be fleshed out a little bit more. But more important, they keep kind of blowing this off and saying, well, Kramer's no longer with, but that doesn't matter. He's a dirty tricks guy, longtime confidant of the Clintons, obviously very close with Obama. And he was involved in this, and clearly, according to that video, and I can't see how they say that's edited, Hillary Clinton gave the thumbs up to this. Now, again, they keep saying, well, they're stolen documents. WikiLeaks are stolen. You can't look at, well, they didn't think they were, it was a concern when Donald Trump's tax returns were leaked out, and they made hay of that. This again speaks to the question of ethics and propriety. They think campaign finance laws are important, but when they run afoul of them, they want to blow it off and say, well, he's no longer employed. I don't think that's all that relevant here.
Heidi.
I just, in this case, don't know what we have here other than Hillary Clinton maybe thought it would be amusing to have a doc stalk Donald Trump. That doesn't necessarily translate into an independent expenditure, as Laura points out. But these are very serious allegations, and that's why, as a journalist, I want to see the full unedited tapes, because O'Keefe had these moles, if you will, inside these organizations for many months, and he's refusing not only to release the unedited tapes, but to even put any kind of a timestamp or any kind of context whatsoever into these tapes. And given his history of misleading editing, I think that that is in the Americans.
He did have this plot to tamper with phones in Democratic Senator Mary Lander's office, and the FBI arrested him and 3 others. They charged him with entering federal property under false pretenses with the intent to commit a felony. He ended up pleading to a misdemeanor. He was sentenced to 3 years probation, and that didn't have to do with any of the editing of that tape, just to be clear of that, of the charges from before.
But a lot of the subjects in these tapes from the past and current, including the lady who was on the oxygen tank, she's been contacted by news organizations, and she said that is not what happened.
Yeah, and we are looking at the tapes as far as the unedited portions where they're talking about the interactions with the Clinton campaign. And I guess the point here is that they have, to Laura's point, have dismissed this entirely. The first tape dealt with inciting violence at Trump rallies, Tom, and there was a complete, push-off, a Heisman Award there, that they were nowhere near this guy. And yet he is talking about hearing from Hillary Clinton and people close to her, interacting with the DNC and Donna Brazile in a contract because she's worried about ABC and Disney and the character. I mean, there's a lot of interaction here that is not explained by the campaign or the DNC.
Can I add one last thing before you go to him? And that is, I think we need to, another journalistic point that we need to make is that NBC News has reported that O'Keefe's group was given money from the Trump Foundation at the very beginning of this, when he was about to launch his campaign. And of course, a lot of his stories have been running through Breitbart. At that time, Steve Bannon was the head of Breitbart, and he's now Trump's campaign manager. So you have to point out the connections as well.
Yeah. I think the issue here is that Donald Trump, the issues at the beginning of October October, it would really give him a pretty powerful opportunity to just reinforce that notion. It speaks to something that I think pretty much everyone, whether they admit it or not, regardless of political leanings, believe now, which is that the Clintons are sort of cronyism incorporated, that there is a deep center to them that in various ways is sustained by the suspension of truth in political expediency. The problem is, I think at this point in the election, because the Trump campaign is sort of self-defined by chaos in a way, his ability to use this to sort of drive those undecided voters into his bloc and say, look, Hillary Clinton, this is something I've already said. I think no, people already believe this. It reinforces something that is most people in the country, most voters believe already existed. It's in an ethical sense terrible, but politically, I don't know how it changes the dimensions of the race.
Yeah, and we'll see. And legally, obviously, there are questions as well about where it goes. Charles, we'll be back with you in a second. The latest from the presidential campaign and the latest polls after this.
The system is corrupt, and it's rigged, and it's broken, and we're going to change it.
All this talk about the election being rigged, trying to stir up people who are supporting him at his rallies, that is a direct threat to our democracy.
That's from the trail today. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump in some key battleground states. This as we have some new polls out. CNN out with a new poll having Hillary Clinton up 5 points, margin of error 3.5. National poll in the four-way race. This tracks exactly with our SR average, the poll of polls. That includes CNN, Quinnipiac, Fox News, Bloomberg, and Monmouth. And it's an average of the most recent polls that we trust. And it has Clinton up 5 last night. We're back with the panel. We went through the other polls out there, the LA Times, Rasmussen, IBT, and IBD, Investors Business Daily, and why our calculations are on those polls. Your sense of the state of this race and where it is in these final 2 weeks?
Well, if you eliminate the bias or you accumulate it and you get parts of it canceling other parts, you end up with a consensus that we're somewhere around 6%. And you see it reflected in the tone and the demeanor of Trump himself. There's a kind of a wistfulness at times. He asked the crowd at one speech, should I have gotten into this? Yes, of course, etc. It's not the kind of charging ahead that you'd expect. And now he's saying that the polls are rigged. I think there's a general feeling in both camps that she is way ahead, and it would take some giant act, external act, to change things, some kind of revelation of criminality somewhere through the WikiLeaks release or not, which I think is unlikely to come. I mean, look at what we are discussing today. Who ordered the duck is the big question, which you'd expect to hear at the dinner party, but not at the center of a national campaign. I mean, in some sense, it's a farce. And I must say, I was far more offended by the Veritas tape that showed the planning for the violence and to blame it on Trump. I think that's of a higher order of magnitude. What's at stake here is a possible violation of some arcane federal election law. But I think in the end, 6% is probably where it is, and the campaigns are acting accordingly.
Now, Laura, traditionally, races tighten towards the end, and we could see that tightening. You're going to have to, if you're on the Trump campaign, see that movement in the next week to see the path to 270.
Yeah, he has to move the needle. There's been a lot of discussion about the overweighting and some of the samples, which I understand the complaint about that, especially the ABC poll that seemed to overweight way too to the Democrats' advantage. But nevertheless, Trump's behind. And he is always better off when he's talking about America and not going back and talking about, well, I'm going to sue them. It's just a waste of time for him. And I don't know if he knows that now. I think he does. He did the Gettysburg speech, so the first 100 days. He's talked about cleaning out the corruption of Washington, which I think most people are really tired of, regardless of their affection for the Clintons or Obamas. People just think they need change in Washington, and I think a lot of these down ballot races, Kelly Ayotte and Heck in Nevada, I think they're pulling away from Trump has actually hurt them in the polls. I think people, they think that's going to help them. I don't think it's helped them at all. I think it's made people trust them less.
Quickly, there are some things in these WikiLeaks. The Bill Clinton being given and funded by Teneo, this company, by $3.5 million a year. Obviously, that's something. And the foundation, there are things that come out day to day that we are looking into. It's just a question, to your point earlier, Tom, whether it breaks through.
Right, and I think, you know, to Charles's point, at this juncture, I think it has to be something, you know, from the emails that were never recovered, that the Russian, prospectively, whatever, I mean, people have their differing perspectives on how WikiLeaks got this. I think it was the Russian, 2009 to 11. Is there evidence of criminality or serious misconduct? Absent that, I think this drip will continue, and I don't think it changed the dimensions of the race, and I think Trump's
that on the first video that was dealing with violence and stirring up violence at Trump rallies, where Robbie Mook and others said they had no relationship with these people at all. And now you see the second video where they clearly have interaction and maybe even direction from the candidate. It's a different story on these two videos.
It is, and obviously that's a question for the voters in terms of trustworthiness, but in terms of the law, if there was actual conversations about doing this, if there was knowing and willful violations, then yes, that could get into a criminal investigation.
Okay. Elliot, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
WikiLeaks is again showering the Clinton campaign with unfavorable emails. The headline tonight, the incredibly lucrative and ethically questionable relationship between Bill Clinton, the former president, and an influential consulting firm. Here's Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry.
New emails show top Clinton advisor Cheryl Mills was privately admitting the family's foundation needed to clean up glaring conflicts of interest around the overlapping nonprofit and for-profit roles of former President Bill Clinton. Mills circulating a memo in December 2011 that said currently the president personally compensates certain employees to perform duties that fall outside of the scope of the foundation entity's mission. These employees...
Are they breaking the law?
Well, the first thing we need to look at is whether or not there's a public communication, and it's not clear to me from the video they put out that there actually is a public communication. That really means a paid political advertisement, so something in the newspaper, broadcast, satellite, something like that. Here, it looks like there just were protesters dressed up as Donald Ducks that had appeared, but I doubt the FEC would see that as a public communication.
What about the interaction between the Clinton campaign, the DNC, and this outside group? Numerous times in this video it says that it was Hillary Clinton's idea to deploy these ducks directly, the candidate.
Well, that's a different question, because anytime a candidate committee or a political party is working with an outside group, you get into possible in-kind contributions. And here, the allegation is that the candidate herself may have directed an outside group to engage in this behavior, and if so, that could be an in-kind contribution. In-kind contributions can be permissible, but they need to be reported. But because we're dealing with an outside third-party group here, that group may also take corporate contributions. And if that's the case, then it clearly would be illegal.
Now, that would result in an FEC filing potentially, and that's a long process.
That's correct, yeah. Typically, an FEC complaint, once filed, for it to go through the process, we're talking 18 months, maybe even years.
But overall, the perception here. This is a Fox News Alert. I'm Brett Baer in Washington. Right now, the Obama administration is confirming what we've been telling you for weeks. Obamacare premiums will go up sharply next year, and many consumers will be down to just one insurer. The Department of Health and Human Services says before taxpayer-provided subsidies kick in, premiums for the mid-level benchmark plan will increase an average of 25% across the 39 states served by the federally run online market. And 1 in 5 customers will have plans from only one insurer to choose from. The administration insists that subsidies, which are supposed to rise alongside rising premiums, will insulate consumers from massive payouts. State regulators, though, are not so sure. Republicans will pounce on the numbers as confirmation that insurance markets created by the 2010 health overhaul are on the verge of collapsing in what they call a death spiral. The Obamacare open enrollment period starts November 1st, 1 week before Election Day. Joining me now, attorney Elliot Burke, an expert in election law. Elliot, thanks for being here.
Great to be with you.
First, let's go over the legality of this. You've seen this video, what this group alleges. What about the legality of what's happening is
worried the San Bernardino terror attack last December and the fact that shooter Tashfeen Malik had a visa to stay in America would expose that Clinton did not fix the visa waiver program. Advisor Ron Klain writing, I don't know if saying, hey, this really wasn't a problem until after I left state is going to cut it.
Clinton Chair John Podesta has his own deep ties to a Kremlin-backed investment firm that gave him 75,000 shares in an energy company. The Wall Street Journal reports Podesta in 2014 moved those shares into an LLC, which shares an address with his daughter, but he says he cut all ties. Though a leaked email now shows Podesta received a bill for legal expenses connected with the LLC funded by Russian money that he says he now has no connection with. Brad?
Follow up on that one. Ed, thank you. We are a little more than 2 weeks away from voting day. By now, everyone pretty much knows the nominees' positions, the strengths, weaknesses. So from here on in, it's all about geography and math. Both candidates spending time in states Donald Trump must win. For Hillary Clinton, it's all about slamming the door and about time. Chief political correspondent Carl Cameron is with the Trump campaign tonight in Tampa, Florida. Good evening, Carl.
Hi, Brett. Well, the election's 2 weeks from tomorrow, and Donald Trump says now
support the president's business, personal, former president, and political activity, while also providing support for foundation activity, for which their services are billed to the foundation. Except later that same month, Chelsea Clinton wrote Mills the proposed reforms, such as setting new rules on outside income for foundation advisors like Doug Band, were hollow. Chelsea writing, quote, I worry the below recreates the existing muddle. It turns out, though, one of the people at the foundation collecting outside income was her own father, who was paid a salary of $3.5 million a year by Band's consulting company, Teneo, according to the recent book, Man of the World, by author Joe Conason. And according to congressional investigators, Hillary Clinton's top aide, Huma Abedin, was also paid by Teneo, the foundation, and the State Department.
When you read these emails, you see that she has very serious ethical problems, and the issues are what should decide this election, and she's wrong on them.
They dismissed it as a scheduling matter and again fell back on the line that the emails were pilfered by the Russians.
The Trump tax returns were stolen as well when they were mailed to the New York Times. You guys didn't object to that. In fact, you jumped all over them.
Well, we don't know where those tax returns come from.
Well, they were clearly stolen.
We don't know.
Another new email shows the Clinton team was